That was interesting.
I think I had one up at the market.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 19th meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of all the exits around the room and join me as we salute the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a new public hearing for CIRE of DUTCHESS. Making a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The applicants are seeking an extension of time to commence and complete construction. This is located at 4185 Albany Post Road. And this is the lot that has been partially cleared. Stormwater tanks have been installed underneath the ground, and there's been signs saying medical plaza coming soon for, let's see, about 6 years, so not coming soon. At any rate, the applicant has indicated he'd like an extension of time in which to complete construction because they had a tenant initially, and the review was delayed by DEC wanting to redo the stream through the site. So they lost that tenant. They're still looking for another one. Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? Any comments from you, Victoria, or my colleagues on the board?
Nope.
No.
There being none, may I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Has this resolution?
I do. Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, resolution to grant additional 2-year extension of the time to commence and complete construction of a site plan, lands of CIRE. June 19th, 2019, resolution number 58-081, whereas, now therefore be resolved that the Planning Board hereby grants a 2-year extension pursuant to section 108-9.6A of the Code of the time in which the applicant must commence construction to and including June 20th, 2020, an extension of the time in which to complete construction to and including June 17th, 21.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is a continued public hearing for NICHOLS Oxygen. The applicant is seeking approval under site plan and special use permit to expand some of the businesses that are there right now. Making a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I should say introduce some new businesses to existing empty buildings. Thanks for getting us, Mr. Chair. Oh, we have a big table tonight.
Big table.
It looks like Alice in Wonderland sat down and shrunk a bit. Thank you for getting the plans to us, the revised plans so quickly. And have you had any progress with DOT, or have you met with them yet?
We have had further conversation with them. We are going to close the southern entrance to the property with concrete curb. I've updated the plan. I just want to see if there's any comments on the other submission before we give another however many copies for
No
for
problem.
final here.
Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? There being none, any comments from our consultant or the board?
No.
We have a draft resolution prepared, conditioned on them working out the entryway with DOT.
And that final change would be approved by the zoning administrator and the engineer. And just to note, it's written in the resolution. This, I don't know, you've already worked it out, but it may cause some changes to your internal circulation where the cars are parked that are for sale. If it does, that can be approved by Tad and Pete as well. It doesn't have to come back to us.
It doesn't affect any of that. So we're
Just in case, we were thinking of every eventuality to not have you come back here. So that's the way the resolution is written. Any comments from the board?
No comment.
No comments.
And no comments from the public. Making a motion to close the public hearing.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone has this resolution?
I do. Resolution granting conditional site plan and special use permit approval for NICHOLS Oxygen property, resolution number 2019-07A, whereas. Now therefore be it resolved that the board makes the following findings pursuant to section 108-8.4 of the zoning law. 1, the project will comply with all applicable requirements of Articles 4 and 5 of the zoning law and will be consistent with the principles of the neighborhood business district. The proposal utilizes spaces within and without the existing buildings that have been in commercial use and are screened by existing trees and natural features. 2, the project will be consistent with the purposes of the zoning law. The proposed increase in scale is permitted by the zoning law and expands the uses at the site without significantly expanding the site's footprint or impact on neighborhood properties. 3, the project will not result in excessive off-premise noise, dust, odors, solid waste, or glare, or create any public or private nuisances. A natural wooded buffer will reduce the potential for glare. The proposed used car use does not generate significant noise, dust, or glare. 4, the project will not cause significant traffic congestion, impair pedestrian safety, or overload existing roads. 5, the project will be suitable for proposed action considering the property's size, location, topography, vegetation, soils, natural habitat, and its ability to be screened from neighboring properties and public roads. The project does not include any new structures and only minor increases in impervious surfaces. 6, the project has been designed to ensure compatibility with surrounding uses and to protect the natural, historic, and scenic resources of the town.
Saying that it won't and saying that
The property is not bordered by any natural, historic, or scenic resources. The neighboring uses are commercial, and the project is not inconsistent with the neighboring uses. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby approves the site plan and grants special use permit for the project as shown on the site plan and authorizes the chairperson or is authorized as needed to sign the site plan after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payments of all fees in escrow. 2, revision of the scale calculation to identify the increase as 45% instead of 145% and amend the note to state the increase in scale from existing to proposed is 45% and delete everything after. 3, revision of the site plan to show the existing Y-shaped entrance exit consolidated into one curb cut as a single two-way driveway. As proposed by the New York State Department of Transportation, the pavement shall be removed from the closed driveway, ground scarified, soil added, area seeded with lawn mixed and mulched to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator and town engineer. Any revisions to the internal circulation plan necessitated by the consolidation shall be approved by the zoning administrator and town engineer. 4, revision of the site plan to add a notation prohibiting fluids leaking or spilling from vehicles and requiring all vehicle repair to be performed inside of the garage building. 5, revision of the site plan to add a note prohibiting the outside storage of parts or materials. 6, revision of the site plan to add a note prohibiting the outdoor storage of unregistered vehicles that are not capable of passing inspection. 7, revision of the site plan to move the pointer of buildings A1 to A3 to the point only to building A1 and revise the label pointing only to building A1 to read existing two-story building with no reference to any dimensions or square footage. Be it further resolved that the planning board recommends that the zoning administrator issue a sign permit for the sign.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just want to add that on some of those conditions, which are very technical, you can reach out to Liz Axelson if you have any questions.
Okay, they seem pretty clear.
Okay.
And I think I have a few of those notes on there.
You may
but,
already, so
I'll read them over and get back to her, Nadine.
these are things that she discussed with you at the last time. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Good luck. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you for all your help.
And good luck with getting through the DOT.
Yeah.
Good luck with getting to the DOT finally as well. Thanks.
Right.
Spring meeting.
The next item on the agenda is Salt Point Solar. The applicants were delayed in removing the trees they need to in order to install the silt fence that will be used to keep the potential for the bog turtles from entering into the site. What happened was is that, if you recall, we had actually hired an environmental consultant from AKRF to do a peer review of their study of likely habitat for Indian and northern long-eared bats. Their study concluded that there would not be any issue with tree clearing at any time. Our consultant disagreed, noting that northern long-eared bats don't forage by going from a forest out into clear areas like Indiana bats. They instead stay in the forest and feed in between the upper tree canopy and the shrub layer. So it's his recommendation that as part of our negative declaration, that we include no tree clearing during the times of months that the northern long-eared bat is there. The Indiana bat was fine because it flies into cleared areas. Subsequent to that, if you recall at this time, the reason why we did this was because the government was closed and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wasn't open, and that's what we were waiting on a sign-off from them. We subsequently received that well after approving the project, and they agreed with the comment that there would not be any potential habitat for the northern long-eared. Now that we're into the time that they need to clear, they've asked us to use the Fish and Wildlife Services conclusion because that's what started this whole process in the first place. We've agreed and prepared a resolution in support of that. Is that a good way to summarize that, Victoria?
Yes. We assumed worst-case scenario because we didn't have the answer. Now we have an answer. They want to move forward without that restriction.
So who has this resolution?
I do.
Thank you.
Resolution granting amended site plan approval. Resolution number 2018-01D, whereas 7 times, and therefore be it resolved that the planning board waives the requirement for a public hearing upon the recommendation of the zoning administrator. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby reaffirms its prior negative declaration adopted on September 5th, 2018, and amends its notice of determination to exclude reference to the seasonal tree clearing restriction as set forth in the attached revised notice of determination. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby approves the amended site plan and authorizes the chair or his authorized designee to sign the amended site plan after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payment of fees and escrow.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda will be a recommendation from our zoning administrator for the waiver of site plan for detached garage renovation in the Historic Overlay District. This is located at 25 Rogers Place. It is in the scenic area of statewide significance. However, the site is not visible from the river or any one of the 2 historic sites, the FDR or the Vanderbilt estate, giving rise to the SAS in the first place. So who has this resolution?
I do. Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, Town Site Plan waiver, Sean Scott, 25 Rogers Place, 6064-08-832925, Site Plan Waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, June 19th, 2019, Resolution Number 2019-26. Whereas a request for site plan waiver has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Sean Scott for repair to the existing 20 by 20 detached garage. And whereas, therefore it be resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit application dated April 22nd, 2019, and the request for a waiver of site plan received by the Planning Department on May 28th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is Renaissance Rehabilitation and Nursing Care. Applicants are seeking approval for a sign already erected at 4975 Albany Post Road. And I have this resolution. First, do we want to have any discussion? You all had a chance to read. I'm sorry about the length of it, but when you're doing a denial, it's best to do an affirmative denial rather than vote no on a positive positive. If that makes any sense? Because you want to detail your reasons, your findings for the denial in the first place, which is why it took me a while. And I'll just point out, this has a tortured history. I'd forgotten that originally, back when it was only Ann and I now were left on the board, we approved through site plan their intent to reface the front of the structure. I remember this now because afterwards, when we drove by when it was completed, you could see the red brick on 2 sides, and we thought from now on we'll have them try to do both other sides. As part of that approval, they had proposed a certain kind of canopy that was somehow changed when they finally got to building it, and they put on burgundy awnings over the door and some of the central windows. They also added coins to the side of the building. Tad thought that they were minor enough that we could waive site plan review to accept them formally, which we did. Then later on, they proposed a sign. The sign, I believe, was going to be in some celebration. They wanted to put it up before some anniversary celebration. It required variances, and we even had a special meeting to pass it, but it wasn't passed in time for them to erect it for the anniversary celebration. It appears they never erected it. Then they put up the sign now they have where, without an approval, because by our code, signs must be installed 6 months after an approval or the approval lapses. In addition, the sign they put up doesn't match the sign that was approved in any way. Well, let's say that some of the lettering on it does. So, resolution to recommend disapproval of a sign permit pursuant to zoning law Section 108-24.3A4D, Renaissance Rehabilitation and Nursing Care Center, 4975 Albany Post Road. June 19, 2019, Resolution 2018-60. Whereas, and I go through that tortured history.
I'm here if you want to speak at all.
Oh, would you like to come and speak?
Karen, I'm the administrator.
Would you like to
Come
come
on
and
up.
speak?
Sure. So yes, the tortured history that you went on to say, I've only been there.
If you could speak into the mic.
The
we're-
microphone?
Yes,
Sure.
we're televised and also everything's recorded. Thank you.
Okay. So, I've worked at Renaissance for 2 years, and that was my mistake. I had a sign approval. Someone was just like, here's the sign approval. So I worked on making a sign. That was after the 6 months or whatever permit was approved in the past. They had change in administration. So the owner just gave me the sign permit, and I called the company, gave him the specs that we had for the last permit, and that's why that sign was made. The past 4 or 5 months, we've been coming to different planning board meetings. And
Zoning Board of Appeals meetings.
Zoning board meetings, correct. I went through numerous different meetings of measuring the sign, of whether or not we needed a variance for the sign. My understanding is that we didn't need a variance for the sign.
You received variances for the size, the dimensional size of the letters and the logo.
Mhm.
You did not need a variance for the overall size of the
Right.
sign. The initial dimensions were labeled incorrectly.
Correct, which was also our mistake. So I just want to understand, so what, going forward, do we need to do?
If the vote goes the way I suspect tonight, there'll be a denial of the sign permit, so you'll have to either change the sign, because our code requires design unity within a site. So before, the colors matched the colors that were proposed on the approved sign that was not put up. Your approval, your permit, they matched the burgundy of the awnings.
Correct. So our colors are purple and yellow. So just so you understand a little bit about the ownership, there was an owner that owned the building and who acted as the administrator for about 30 years, Mr. Yanowitz. I don't know if you've met him. And then there was a new owner that bought the building, Mr. Koshitsky, and he bought that building about 4 or 5 years ago. When he bought the building, he was a co-owner with Mr. Yanowitz, and they started to change the face, which it sounds like that's when they changed the front of the building that you're describing. So when they changed the front of the building, initially it looked like that sign that they had was white and green, and they had some maroon, and it was in the awnings like you're discussing. But our colors are purple and yellow. So that's why that sign is purple and yellow. And we do have the intent of going through another planning board process to change the awnings to be purple, to match the sign, to match our logo, our new name. And that's what color all of our business cards are, our shirts.
The approval
our
for the
pens.
exterior renovation was given in 2009, so he must have bought it well before 4 years ago. And at the time, I said, we approved the sign because it exhibited design unity. At this point, I struggled, and the zoning administrator struggled as well. There's no way we can say that this matches anything else on the sign, at the site. The only thing it does match is that large van that you have, passenger van that you have, that's also decked out in purple and gold. It has the Renaissance Rehabilitation, quite large, that you park right near the road, which functions as a sign as well. But that's not a site plan element for us to say these match. There's nothing, in other words, there's nothing, believe me, there's nothing I can do. We try to be a business-friendly planning board, a development-friendly planning board, but part of that is also being a business-friendly entity also means making sure that everyone's treated the same. So you're not really allowed in this town or any other town I can think of in the county just to erect a sign without approvals. I'm not saying this is your fault. You thought you had a sign permit that was valid into perpetuity, I guess. But that's not how these work. And you would have needed to have worked with the board or at least the zoning administrator before it was erected. I mean, you don't have to take the sign down unless the town forces you to, but we can't, as a board, permit it because it doesn't match design unity.
Well, I mean, once it's disapproved, it will be an illegal sign, as it is now.
I was going to say it's already an illegal sign.
It is.
So it doesn't change that status. If we could approve it, we would, and that would make it legal. But there's nothing I can. Again, a passenger van in those colors doesn't necessarily. It's not a site plan element that I can say this matches and that's always there, so therefore it matches something. The process should be to go through and change the awnings. And I want to just say straight out, if you've been working here a few years, if you look around Hyde Park, our comprehensive plan, which is what the zoning code is based on, is replete with instructions trying to have the planning board help create a sense of place. As a consequence, you'll find that corporate branding, while we appreciate how everybody wants to do it, has to be a little subtler here. If you notice, McDonald's doesn't have a building that looks like every other building.
Right.
It's much different in scale. The colors are different as well. It's all cream and white. You see very little of the red and gold. If you look at the Dunkin' Donuts down at the end, that's also a unique structure. Well, it was a unique structure. Other towns like the way it looked, so they followed. But if you'll notice, many towns allow Dunkin' Donuts to have purple and orange striped awnings on the outside of the building and all purple and orange signs. And if you look here, you'll see that they're very subtly evident. You can see the corporate colors are just more subtle. So I think what we need to do is work with you guys as part of your site plan change. And it may be that Ms. Moss, you need to first start with Ms. Moss, the zoning administrator. It may be that she'll say, oh, change in awnings doesn't really require site plan. That's her ability to say that. If that's the case, then as long as she gives you approval, you can erect purple awnings and let it go at that. I'll also add that while I appreciate your wanting to attract attention, this is an area, it's a transition from the busy commercial center here out into the rural area. And it's been the board's practice, this is all written in the resolution, but it's been the board's practice to try to get colors that are more commonly found in nature. Browns, earth tones, things like that, so that greens, reds, things that you can see more harmonious with the natural elements. That particular color, I mean, I'm from Louisiana originally, it looks like Mardi Gras purple.
And actually, I have something to say about the color I'd like to.
Go right ahead.
So, I wanted to address another issue of safety. I know it might sound strange. Signs and buildings that are painted in garish colors are developed in mind to attract the attention of passing motorists. A tradition laden with good intentions, but it is actually a very bad practice. It's obvious that the color of the Renaissance Rehabilitation roadside sign is designed to do precisely that, to attract the attention of drivers and with hope bring in more business. An acquaintance asked me about the color, and I said, it's very bright, perhaps too bright. He said, well, it really grabs your attention, which appears to be the point of the color choice. And it also is the problem as well. The color stands out so enormously that it can be considered an eyesore. In 1958, Robert Moses, a man who definitely knew his highways, stated unequivocally that eyesores along around roads are traffic hazards. In 1963, a study conducted by the New York State Thruway Authority found that there are 3 times as many accidents per mile where driver inattention was encouraged by billboards and similar eyesores. This attention-grabbing purple sign is exactly that type of hazard because it intentionally competes for the driver's attention. Also, if we were to let this pass, it sends a signal to other businesses that it's perfectly fine to construct similarly colored signs in order to compete with the driver's attention. This isn't just an aesthetic hazard, it's a safety hazard. A side note regarding brightly colored signs generating more business, an enterprise like Renaissance Rehabilitation most likely gets its customers from online research and recommendations. This type of business should really only use the sign as an address marker. Thank you.
No, thank you. We had wondered about that because my sister just had emergency hip replacement surgery and had to go through rehab. And basically the process was who takes her insurance and who has an empty bed. I don't think you guys even had an empty bed at the time because you didn't make it up or you didn't take her insurance. But they gave me Ferncliff and I think the Lutheran home in Poughkeepsie. Since she lives near Ferncliff, that's what I chose. But in other words, we're somewhat questioning why the sign needs to be so vibrant to attract the average driver when you're typically not going to make a decision for a rehab center based on how many times you drive by it and how many times it's caught your attention.
I don't think Ferncliff even has a sign out on the main road.
Yeah, they just have
Not
a,
until
You're
you
right,
get to
they
the
don't.
roundabout.
You're right, they don't.
Not to, okay.
So I'm going to read the resolution.
Just another comment. When you're
Yes.
driving, you're in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, and when you're driving by, maybe it's my age or eyesight or whatever, but you've got that gold on the purple. It's hard to read. I mean, it's just a big sign, and it's nothing's definitive as you're going by.
Okay.
So you're saying there's not enough contrast?
Exactly. Right.
It's also the font is kind of a thin font. It's, by the way, the lettering's pretty, and you've done a very nice job on the gardening, the landscaping down below the sign. It's quite nice, and the site's maintained accurately. None of this is meant insulting to you personally, in
No,
other
I
words.
understand that. I didn't
At
make the
all.
sign, so I don't take it
At all.
personally.
I mean, I think when I go by, it looks really nice. I see a lot of activity and people outdoors, so if you're the manager of whatever you're doing there, you seem to be doing a good job because I see a lot of activity.
And your ratings have gone up.
Yes.
Yes, they have.
That's good
We
to
just
hear.
had a deficiency-free New York State survey, so
Wow.
Great.
Congratulations.
thank you.
Deficiencies free is not always easy.
Impossible to do, yes.
Yeah, I know someone who works as helping mentally disabled individuals with housing
Yeah.
down in Brooklyn, and she was able to achieve 3 years without a deficiency, and the state started giving her awards over
Wow.
things. It's hard because
Yeah.
the smallest thing can cause this, so
Yes.
I know it's tough. Resolution 2018-60. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved, the planning board hereby recommends that the zoning administrator deny the permit for the proposed sign for Renaissance Rehabilitation and Nursing Care Center. In support, we make the following findings. The applicant is, the applicant has twice installed unapproved freestanding signage that did not comply with the provisions of 108-24. In 2016, applications for area variances and a sign permit for the approved sign for the site were submitted and granted successfully in June and July of that year. At that time, the approved sign as proposed and drawn was code compliant in all respects except the graphic logo for which an area variance was approved. This latest application suggested a new administration assumed the permit was still valid and in effect, but decided for corporate branding purposes to erect one that was different in color, size, and letter height. Regardless, the current purple color was not approved in the previous permit. The exterior of the building was reviewed by the planning board when the initial upgrades were proposed after its purchase in 2009. The board gave positive comments as to the proposed canopy and stucco resurfacing of the exterior. The color of the proposed sign does not have any unity with the existing maroon design scheme for the site. Color is cited as a way to achieve design unity in 108-24.f.2. Even if the applicant were to apply for approval to change the existing color scheme of the site from maroon to a purple tone that would parallel the color of the unapproved but already erected proposed sign, to satisfy the zoning code's requirement for all signs to exhibit design unity, the planning board would be hard-pressed to approve such a color scheme. We find the purple color a garish and incongruous one for an area that represents a transition from a small cluster of commercial uses to the more rural pattern of development just north. It has been the planning board's practice to request color schemes in such areas, i.e. ones located out of the traditional commercial centers on routes 9 and 9G, that are commonly found in nature, such as browns, greens, reds, and black. Accordingly, we do not believe that where purple awnings proposed under a site plan amendment that we met with favor. Therefore, we find the proposed sign, which has already been erected, does not satisfy the requirements for design unity within the site. 2, that the board appreciates businesses' desire to brand across multiple platforms as part of a marketing plan. Our zoning law is replete with requirements that argue against such a practice in this community. McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts are examples of franchises that have been heavily branded in terms of architecture, colors, and standard signage. However, both businesses made accommodations for locations in Hyde Park by erecting unique structures which reference traditional architecture, non-standard colors, and signs that incorporate some branded elements but are not dominated by them. For example, Dunkin' Donuts corporate colors are purple and orange. In the standard buildings, awnings are purple and orange striped, and signage reflects the same. In the Hyde Park model, these colors are only subtly evident. To phrase it simply, a large purple sign with supporting purple posts appears to be substantially in conflict with the existing neighborhood and community character. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? The motion carried unanimously. I apologize, it was such
It's
a
okay. Do
negative
you
one.
have a copy of all
I have a
that?
copy you may have right here.
Thank
Either
you.
one of us.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, colleagues. That's never pleasant to do. For that
No.
matter, I think that's the first time we've ever denied a sign.
It is.
We've always tried to
First
work
time
with
we've
people.
ever denied it like that.
Yeah.
I find it jarring every time I drive by it.
I want to point out another example. The storage facility had originally proposed neon green.
Oh,
Oh, right.
And that was toned down to be more of a forest green.
Mm-hmm.
but they also worked with us before erecting it. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm
Is
just
it-
saying, there's a history of not allowing bright garish.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be able to work with them to come up with something that works.
I hope so. And would you mean Mr. Higgins? Yes. Oh, sorry, you didn't have to come tonight, but I'm glad you did. It's nice to meet you. We have a recommendation from the zoning administrator for a site plan waiver for a house remodel that's going to have new windows, roof siding, repair of the front porch stairs, and the railing in the historic overlay district. This is located at 39 Horseshoe Drive, near someone who lives here, I think. Right down the street.
Around
This
the
is
corner.
around the corner.
Around
This
the
is
corner,
not
yeah.
actually visible from either historic site or from the river, although it's a nice area where you're moving. It's a nice neighborhood. You have a nice neighbor right down here. I assume that's your house. I shouldn't say that. Welcome to Hyde Park, if you just moved here. We hope you do. How's that? Who has this file?
I do. Nathaniel Higgins, 39 Horseshoe Drive, site plan waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, Resolution 2019-27, whereas a request for site plan waiver has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Nathaniel Higgins for home remodel to include new windows, roof, siding, and repair of front porch, stairs, and railing to his existing single-family home. And whereas, therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit application dated May 23rd, 2019, and the request for waiver of site plan received by the Planning Department on June 11th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Good luck with your renovations. And thank you for investing in our community.
And making it look better.
Yes, one step at a time. The last item on the agenda is River Ridge at Hyde Park. The applicants were seeking a site plan waiver for permission to erect stairs off the back sides of the buildings. You can do a presentation if you'd like, but you don't have to.
All that work, you gotta look.
If you'd like to, you may. We've been working on this project since we joined in 2006, so we're very familiar. Yes.
2005.
You can answer one. Is Diversified Realty Advisors still involved?
The partners broke up, so one gentleman went one way, one went the other way, and they started PCD Development, which is still affiliated with DRA. It's a little
Mr. Stein is still involved
John
then.
Stein, so yes, he's
I
still
thought so. I forwarded the waiver resolution, et cetera, to him, and he wrote back, but I noticed that the email address was different. It was no longer DRA.
Yes.
And I think DRA is no longer involved with Hudson Heritage or the former psychiatric center in Poughkeepsie. They seem to have sold as well.
Yeah, I don't know if Nick Mignon is still is part of that, or if
That was
they
George.
sold
It was George Carfano that I was dealing with on that
Okay.
from DRA as well. But there were more than one partner on that project
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
time.
there was
So,
multiple.
now this is so these. You sent us the elevations. The key note here is that they're not visible from Route 9. They're not really that visible from the other sites. Ms. Moss did opine, I hope you saw it in her letter, that if you're going to add rear stairs for all the other units, that she wants to have a site plan amendment, a formal one done, which would require a public hearing likely, just because she wants the opportunity, I would imagine, through a public hearing for other residents who live there now to comment. But the key thing, again, is that they're not visible, and more importantly, you said it would help you with the sales, and I think all of us up here would like to see that finished, complete, new residents in it, et cetera. I know you would as well.
Well, me, definitely.
You would as well. Yeah, when we first started dealing with this, it was a different owner and different
Yeah, it was
project manager.
Yeah, it was Cambridge, and I came I'm
right.
working my 6th year, believe it or not, doing a clubhouse in one building, and then just a few apartments that they didn't finish.
And we remember all the problems with the clubhouse, the way it was worked through as well, but that's been solved. So,
How do the residents like their clubhouse?
You know, it's funny that, when you build it, it's like, when's it getting done? When's it getting done? And then when it's done, it's like, no cars in there. I'm like, come on, I want to go party just to use it. But,
That's because they can walk, right?
Yeah, but the pool gets utilized a lot.
Great, great.
that's nice to
And then
get.
after hours, I'm not really sure. After 6 o'clock, I leave the site, and then, hopefully they're down.
That's when the real parties start.
Yeah.
There were many residents who said they'd like to have like birthday parties for grandchildren when they were visiting, stuff like that. So,
Definitely Super Bowl parties,
good.
It'd be nice.
Nice.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
And any other comments from the board or consultant? Who has this resolution?
I do. Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, River Ridge Associates, Site Plan Waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2. Whereas, a request for site plan waiver has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by River Ridge Associates for the addition of rear deck stairs to the following units in Building T: 287, 289, 291, 293, 295, and 297 on Hudson View Terrace. Whereas, times 5, Therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the proposed changes as described in the building permit application dated June 4th, 2019, and the request for a waiver of a site plan received by the Planning Department on May 29th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Would you like a copy of the resolution for any reason?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good luck. We hope sales continue on well. Mhm.
Sorry, you can have this one.
Take care.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda is we have nothing on an agenda for July 3rd.
Wow.
No, it's, we place all the public hearings for the 17th because
Oh,
the
yes.
circulation date needed to be
That's
for
right.
30 days.
Right.
And yesterday was technically the last day for submission. Something did come in, but it's for Hutchins Storage, Statsburg
Yep,
Storage.
Yep.
And it's got more information, but it's not complete still. Tad pointed out today that there's no narrative for the special use permit. At first, there wasn't a special use permit because he didn't think he needed it. And I think he tried to constrain to show that he didn't need it, but really he did, as we all agreed. So he put in the application for the SUP, but no narrative. If you recall, the first 6 points that we make, the findings that we make for Nichols Oxygen, those are all criteria that the applicant is supposed to address and that we have to include in our resolutions because that's the criteria for the special use
Right.
permit.
It's the
Right.
basis
They
of
need the
approval.
It's the basis of the approval, and there's no narrative from the applicant in there. So just to make sure that this is, I think I could cancel it because there's nothing on the agenda, but just to make sure, I thought it would be better if we had a motion in agreement that there wouldn't be a July 3rd meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Does this mean that on July 17th, we are bringing our cots?
Yes.
Because it's going to be that long?
Yes.
We'll also have Bellefield on July 2nd.
Which one?
Bellefield.
Oh.
Recent addition.
Yeah,
Fishing in
so,
Alaska.
will you really? How nice for you.
Hey, you know?
I sent out the reason why Bellefield was pulled, so, but
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
as usual, a lot of
Moving parts.
moving parts on the day of, so,
I
at
see
any rate,
that.
making a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I see Mr. Higgins was riveted.
Oh,
You didn't leave.
Planning board meetings are fun.
They don't always go